Back at it with another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you are catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation. We stream it live Sunday nights, 10 o'clock. Most Sunday nights. Sometimes it's a Monday. Much to cover here today. The Royals have had one of their worst weeks yet. Saw the comments up there already. Still 11 games over 500. And with today's come from behind win, was it the biggest win of the year, the best win of the year? We'll talk about that. Where are we on our playoff optimism meter? The trade deadline's right around the corner. How do you replace Michael Wacha? The Royals are now going to have to find a way to do that. What's the route that they will take to replace Michael Wacha? Kyle Isbel might be out for a little while. Are they going to actually have to call up a position player? If so, who will it be? We talk about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We are off and running here on another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. And Rany, we heard JJ Picollo say, hey, listen, when he was on with me a couple of weeks ago on my radio show, he said, look, at some point we're going to go through a tough stretch. We might lose 7 in a row, and we'll find out what this team is made of at that time. Well, I'm happy to say that they keep grabbing a win, at least in the Twins and Padres series, keeping themselves from being swept, which I think is a huge part of the equation, to not get swept. But it was their first rough week, but they get a big win today to avoid the sweep at the hands of the Padres. How big was today's win?
It was a big win. I would argue it was the biggest win of the season so far. Like, if we look back at the end of this year and this is the biggest win of the season, then something went wrong. But right now, it's early June. This was a really big win. And one of the things, there are many things that differentiate good teams from bad teams. One of the things is the ability to staunch the bleeding. Like you said, I mean, teams are going to go through rough stretches. I think the Rangers lost 7 or 8 in a row last year, and they won the World Series. But you may recall, I've been talking about this for many years now. The Royals have had an absolutely uncanny streak of losing at least 6 games in a row by Memorial Day, by their 60th game of the season. Every year from 2004 through 2023, with the exception of 2014 and 2015. So in a 20-year stretch, the Royals either lost 6 in a row, not just at some point in the season, but within 60 games, or they won the pennant. So if you consider that to be an indicator of any sort, that basically says, as long as the Royals could just get to June without losing 6 in a row, they're in cream cheese. That's the optimistic way of looking at it, right?
They're in
cream cheese.
Okay.
Yes, everything else is cream cheese.
They're a bagel or no?
I'm quoting Coach Fenstock from Teen Wolf, as every cultured person knows.
Okay.
But they managed to avoid. They got to 3 in a row. They were making me a little bit nervous. Then they went out there. Seth Lugo pitched like the ace that he's been all season and snapped a losing streak at 3. They lost 3 more in a row. So they did lose 6 of 7. Looked like it was going to be 7 of 8. But even in that losing streak, I mean, they had games this week where they were losing to, let me pull up the games here. Yeah, they were losing to the Twins 6-1 in the 9th, 4-2 in the 9th, and then against the and then the last game of the series, 2 games later against the Padres, 11-3 in the 9th. So down by 5 in the 9th, down by 8 in the 9th, down by 2 in the 9th. In all 3 games, they got the tying runs to the plate, if not on base. I mean, it was, but they lost all the games. It was moral victory after moral victory, even as they were losing. But today they finally had an actual victory, not just a moral victory. And it was set up, to be perfectly honest, by what happened on Friday when they were down 11-3, and Nelson Velasquez came within half a degree of launch angle from tying the game. I honestly think if it hadn't been Kauffman, it would have been a home run in most ballparks. If the ball had been last year's baseball instead of this year's baseball, which is not traveling as well, it would have been a home run. It would have been game tying home run. But even without tying the game, the Royals forced the Padres to go to their closer, which meant he wasn't available today, which meant that the Padres went to a left-handed reliever. And after Vinny got on, he was going to be facing Salvador Perez. Nelson came in as the pinch hitter. Nick lofted 3 right-handers in a row. They had to stick with their lefty because their right-handed closer was gassed. So the near win, but ultimate loss on Friday night really paved the way for Nelson Velasquez to come up huge tonight or this afternoon. And it in that way, it kind of reminds me of 2014 and 2015, where there was a narrative that the team had in place where even games, what seemed like a very minor moment in, September had an echoing result in October. It was almost poetic. This felt a little bit like that, where a game where that you think, they almost came back, but ultimately they lost. But maybe this will, this shows something about the team's mettle, shows something about the team's ability to come back. Yeah, it showed us that, but it actually had a very direct effect in wearing out the Padres bullpen and allowing them to come back today. So that part of it was really cool. But the other part of it, and this is something I don't think is enough is being made of, before Nelson Velasquez's triple to tie the game in the ninth, the most remarkable thing happened. Something even more rare than a Nelson Velasquez triple. Because Nelson Velasquez has hit 3 triples in his career. They hit them all in 2022 as a Cub. But he, as recently as 2022, he hit 3 triples. Do you know what happened in the ninth inning that was even rarer than a Nelson Velasquez triple for the Royals?
The bullpen held. Is that what you're getting at?
No. Something literally rarer, not just it seems that way. Salvador Perez drew a walk after falling behind.
Yes.
0-2.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times he's done that this year?
This would be the year that he would have done it, but probably none.
0.
Zero.
How many times did he do it last year?
0.
He did it once in 2022. This was the 13th time in his major league career that he drew a walk after being down 0-2. And that was especially impressive because, remember, he represented the tying run in the ninth inning. So on the one hand, he was an extremely important base runner. And when he got on, they went to Dairon Blanco, and as soon as that ball came off the wall and got away from the center fielder, you knew the game was tied. But at the same time, it was the tying run in the ninth inning. Like that Salvador Perez, he could have tied the game with one swing. I think he tried to do that on the first 2 swings. But he was patient enough to work the count back and ultimately drew the walk and let his teammates take the glory there. And that is a somewhat more mature Salvador Perez. I mean, he's up to 18 walks on the season. I mean, some of those are intentional, but 17 walks. But he had 19 all of last season. So, that to me, even before the Nelly triple, really set up the inning by allowing the Royals to get the first 2 base runners on in an inning they were down 2 runs. I mean, that was crucial. So just a really, really good win all around. And, yes, it was a losing week. It was the Royals' first losing week of the season. But it wasn't a disaster week. And that sometimes is what you need in order to stay in contention. The Royals are still up on a playoff spot by 5.5 games. The Red Sox lost today. They're kind of the team that is 7th in a 6-team race. So the Royals went from 4.5 up to 5.5 up in the wild card race. It's going to be a long season. It's going to be hairy, but 5.5 games at this point in the season, that's a nice cushion to have.
No, it is. And, I think the fact that they're able to, when things are not going well and they're taking on some water with injuries, able to fight through and get a victory is huge. I mean, this is, it's a big part of what the Orioles are. They don't get swept, right? That's been their big streak. And if you can always make sure you get one, you're not going to win every series. You want to win every series, but you're not gonna. Yeah, but you got to make sure that you're not getting swept and you're not having these 10 and 12 and 14 game losing streaks. We've talked about it a lot. If they were playing just okay baseball and then they would drop 12 in a row. And it's like, well, if you just gotten 4 wins in there, right? How much easier it is to handle that because you just dropped 4 games, below 500 in that stretch, as opposed to 12, which just crushes you. So this is the mark of a good team when you can get one. And how much better do they look when you can put Velasquez out there and have him be a productive bat, which he has been here of late. When he is hot and going, that lineup looks a lot better.
It's kind of like what we talked about when Michael Massey came in and extended the lineup by a bat. Being without Massey makes Nelson Velasquez even that much more crucial. And, in the first couple weeks of the season, he was raking, and then, he went ice cold. The Royals have, still not made any changes when it comes to, a couple of dead lineup spots. In the case of Nelly, I think they've proven their patience to have been worthwhile. That he's the only guy I think we can say that about. But even before today's game, going back to last 3 weeks since May 10th, hitting only 231 with a 282 OBP, but a 539 slug. And that's sort of who he is. I mean, he's his career batting average with the Royals, and this includes, last year. I mean, last year when he had 14 bombs in 40 games, he only hit 233. In modern baseball, in the old days, a 230 hitter, even if you hit for power, that made you Dave Kingman at best. Like that's still, you are a deeply flawed player. But in a modern 2024 baseball, the league batting average is in the 230s. So you can hit 220, 230 if you've got pop. You're going to be valuable. So that, I'm hoping he can bring that average up 20 points and start hitting for a little bit more pop. But he has been doing it of late. And yes, the lineup needs him badly, in part because we need to have another discussion about MJ Melendez at some point. All right, we'll get to that, but he's broken. I'm not even being mean about it. I think he needs to be fixed. I don't think they're doing him any favors by keeping him in the lineup. He homered the other day, and he had some good swings and even drew a walk. And there was hope for optimism on the broadcast. Since then, he's 0 for 9, no walks. He's been made out in his last 9 plate appearances, and we're going back from the 14th game of the season. So he was hot for 2 weeks to start the year. He was very, very good. And that's why his numbers for the season are just horrible and not like historically horrible. But from April 12th until yesterday, and this doesn't count as 0 for 3 today, he's hitting 120 with a 160 OBP and a 224 slug. And the numbers sometimes are so, when you have numbers that extreme, it's actually kind of hard for the mind to comprehend just how bad it is. Because once you get to a certain point, you just say, yeah, that sucks. But even sucking has levels. And there's minor suck, there's major suck, and then there's just whatever the hell MJ is doing right now. Because you could add 50 points to all of those numbers, and they would still be historically bad. I mean, these are Zach Greinke numbers, but Zach Greinke today at age 41, I think could hit 120 with the 160 OBP. That Zach Greinke's career numbers are much, much better than that.
Yes.
And and he's a left fielder. Like, he plays a position where you need offense. It's great that the Royals, they had that 8-game winning streak and he wasn't hitting. I was like, well, they were running on vibes. They don't need him. But this is why you do need a guy who can actually hit left field, because then you do have weeks like this where, Bobby Witt can't carry the team every single day. So we will see. Kyle Isbel will talk about that, but this is an opportunity for the Royals to bring up somebody from AAA, but they've got to stop deluding themselves about MJ Melendez. He's swinging right through pitches. Today, he popped up on a sweeper, an 81-mile-an-hour pitch right down the middle. He just popped it up. And this just can't go on anymore.
No, it's and don't you think something's coming soon? Don't you think that they've gone as far as they can go?
Yes, said Rany from 3 weeks ago. So I don't know. I think so. They have an off day now. I don't even, to me, it's not even about, you believe in MJ. I don't dislike MJ. I think if there's any hope for him, he has to go to AAA and rework his swing again. He has a very, unique batting stance. He stands his the positioning of his bat. I just feel like and I'm not a hitting coach by any means, but he has an unusual hitting motion, and he's not hitting, and he's swinging through mediocre velocity pitches. All of that combined tells me they need to rework his swing. And yes, they have to rework it again. Look, these are high maintenance guys. Nick Prado, is not hitting with any, with any real slug in AAA. So maybe neither one of them is going to work out. But if there's any hope for MJ, and we've seen moments where he, not just moments, we've seen 2-3 month stretches where he has been an above average major league hitter. But if there's any hope of getting him back to that, I think he needs to go back to AAA and do something radical. I don't think you can expect him to make a radical change to his swing while trying to be in the everyday major league lineup. I think it'll be in his best interest. It'll be in the franchise's best interest. It'll be in their best interest to try and make the playoffs this year if they send him to Omaha now.
He's 2 for his last 27. I don't care about the home run. And at that point, I think something's coming. I think they've got to make a move. The problem is, I think they were probably getting really close. The problem is Kyle Isbel. And what are they going to do about him? Like that's the issue that sits here with them. But by the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best. Free consultations, no commissions, all their crews in-house. That's right. They're actual Gann employees, not somebody they just picked up on the way to your job. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expense. Don't have bumper cars going out in your parking lot. A brightly coated, brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents and liability issues for you. You can also get your seal coating done right now. Don't worry. The fall will be here before you know it. Then the cold weather will come. Get it done now. Don't be running right up against the cold weather when they can't get it done. Find Gann Asphalt online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Let's discuss. Let's fold in the Kyle Isbel. I mean, that is part of the problem here. We're going to talk about the trade deadline in a minute, but where do you go if you need another outfielder, right? Like, because if Isbel's down, now you're going to go get 2 guys,
right?
Right? Are we talking about the return of Nate Eaton?
I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here, right? Like, so on the one hand,
there actually is not. There are a lot of names, right? There are a lot of yes.
I didn't say there were good options. I'm just saying there are options.
Possibilities.
Yeah, there are options here, but I'm not saying they're great options. But we got to go. We have to discuss them because the only untenable option, the only intolerable option is the option of just staying with MJ Melendez every day. And so if Kyle Isbel has to go on the injured list, we don't know that for sure. And if it just been the injury itself, they're saying it's non-concussive, so it might just be, so there's no danger of head trauma if he plays. But at the same time, whiplash is not concussive, and you worry that he had some whiplash on that. Throw in the fact that he just got hit in the noggin and was very lucky not to have a more severe injury, while at the plate just not even a week ago. It seems to me like it might just be in his best interest to take a week off, 10 days off. So on the one hand, the Royals, we've talked about this. They've used 14 position players all year. Aside from Nick Lofton and Michael Massey, not a single change, which is remarkable when you consider some of the numbers on the offensive side of things. So at least there's an opportunity here for somebody in Omaha to get called up. And I want to, send a brief shout out here to the Omaha Storm Chasers, because whatever is going on with the year of Kansas City is certainly not, it's not limited to Kansas City, because the Omaha Storm Chasers going in, won their 6th in a row today. They are 39-16.
Oh, and you said 39. I thought you were talking about how old they are.
Yeah, they might be that too. But look, they're 39-16, and minor league winning loss records don't matter much, but to the extent they do, AAA matters more than A-ball. And when you're winning at a 72% clip, there are guys there that are probably capable of contributing. Because look, we're not looking for stars. We're not thinking let's bring up our top prospect in Omaha. No, they don't have a top prospect in Omaha. Do they have somebody who can hit better than MJ Melendez and play left field? I think so. Do they have somebody who can spell Kyle Isbel in center field for 10 days? Maybe. And we've talked a lot about Drew Waters. I will say this in the Royals' defense. His numbers have come down quite a bit over the last few weeks. He's now hitting just 265 with a 340 on base and a 453 slug. He has not been in the lineup the last 2 days, which is interesting. And David Lesky reported that he's heard some talks that the Royals may be in talks possibly to move him. I don't know if it seems kind of strange that they would trade him, but I mean, the Royals seem to have cooled on him. If they're not going to use him and they can move him in some sort of deal, I mean, the Royals are out there at least exploring what's on the trade market. We've seen some comments from JJ about that. I don't know that anything's imminent. It's early June. And, teams, this is not anywhere close to the peak of trade season. But look, I'd rather them make a trade now. Look, you're in the race. Get a guy for 4 months instead of 2. So anyway, the point is Drew Waters may not be the answer. But the thing about Drew Waters, there's like 3 or 4 other guys on Omaha that are out hitting him significantly. So they do have some other options if they want to bring in. You mentioned Nate Eaton. Nate Eaton had just an absolutely terrible, 60 or 70 at bat stretch last year. But the dude can play defense. We've definitely seen him play defense. He can play, his corner outfield numbers are phenomenal. He's played a little bit of center field, but I like him more as a left fielder or even a right fielder. And, he hit pretty well in 2022 and 122 plate appearances. Last year was only 56 plate appearances. He's got an OPS, what is it going into today in AAA? 923. He's hitting 328 with a 552 slug. But CJ Alexander has a 947 OPS. My favorite dude, Logan Porter, can't play the outfield, but he could DH. He's got a 1057 OPS. That dude has just been an elite AAA hitter for 3 years.
Can I read the ages just real quick, just so people understand? These are the AAA position players. I'm just going to rattle their ages off. 27, 30, 27, 27, 30, 25, 25, 27, 26, 34, 30, 28, 25, 26, 26, and 25. And by the way, one of the 26s is Michael Massey. Okay. And one of the 25s is Nick Lofton. And if you go to AA, it's not that when you consider it's another level down. 24, 23, 26, 24, 23, 29, 26, 26, 26, 24, 24, 24, 23, 22. And that's Caden Wallace, 24. I mean, look, I'm with you that some of these guys, yes, can. Do I think Nate Eaton can come up and do what MJ Melendez is doing? Yes, and play better defense, right? Like I don't, MJ Melendez has improved a lot. We've talked about that. So, his throwing arm has been much better. But like realistically, if you're going to have to make do right now, if you're not going to get hitting anyway, at least get a guy who can defend and really help your pitchers out.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I think, like I said, if Nate Eaton comes up and can play defense, like there is a level of offense that is just so unacceptable that defense is irrelevant, right? And when you're hitting 120 in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks now, it's like, anybody out there, put Nelson Velasquez in left field, and like I said, DH Logan Porter, and whatever you lose on defense, you're going to gain, and then some, I think, on offense. And I think the Royals really have to consider, and like you said, now they may have to do 2 transactions. They may want to bring up 2 guys, but we have to see some movement here because they're giving away a lineup spot. And especially with Massey out, they can't afford to give up many more. I mean, give Contreras credit for using that bench really well. And, Adam Frazier's got a 316 on base, which, isn't great, but it's better than league average. Garrett Hampson's hitting 314, and he drives me nuts with his base running, and his defense has been really bizarre at times. But again, in a league where the league batting average is up to 240 now, it's out of the 230s, exactly 240. You hit 314, you do nothing else, you're going to have value. Like if you're hitting 75 points above the league average. So they're doing the best they can with the bench guys they have, but they can't afford an everyday guy hitting what MJ is hitting right now.
No, and I think you'll see something happen soon, depending upon what's going on with Kyle Isbel.
Right.
And if they do, who do you think they make the move for? I think they bring up Nate Eaton because when I talked to JJ Picollo a couple of weeks ago, he brought up, and I said, hey, your system, and do you have help down there? He brought up Nate Eaton's name, without me putting it in front of him. So I think they still think of him as a guy that can help on the big league club. I think that'll be the guy. Is that? I
think is a very good chance it'll be him. My only concern, I just want to confirm this. Yeah, he is not on the 40-man roster. That's the only concern, is that there's always going to be a preference there. It's always about inventory. He was actually, I believe he was designated for assignment and re-signed with the organization, which is great. But not being on the 40-man roster makes things a little tricky. Although, based on that, let's see who's on the 40-man roster that they could bring up. You got Drew Waters, Nick Prado, Austin Nola, who's kind of the third catcher, right?
Yep.
Michael Massey's on the IL. And then the only other guy, the only corner outfield quote unquote, I use prospect reservedly here, unfortunately, is Tyler Gentry, who is, basically the only regular in Omaha who's not hitting. Is hitting 182. And this is his second disappointing year in a row. Man, we loved him as a prospect 2 years ago. He had 326 with 965 on OPS in 2022. But ever since getting to AAA, his numbers have fallen off. I don't think they're bringing him up. So they may look at that and be like, none of the options we have on the 40-man roster are going to fit with what we need. So they're going to have to make a 40-man roster spot, and completely understandable. And Nola, who's 3 for 42 in Omaha right now, may be the guy that they figure they can just waive him. Maybe they can re-sign him to a minor league deal to be the emergency third catcher. But based on that inventory, I think Nate Heaton, if they're going to go off the 40-man anyway, Nate Heaton would be a great guy. He's got some experience. He has not sucked. He's not Drew Waters, which apparently is not the guy they want. Like I would expect Drew Waters, but based on the fact that it seems like the Royals want to go in a different direction, I would be satisfied with Nate Heaton right now.
Is this right? Somebody just said Nate Heaton hasn't played since May 24th.
I was not aware of that. I knew that. Yeah, well, looking at the box scores, you may be right. So, okay, maybe it won't be Nate Heaton. I mean, John Rave has been hitting okay. He's, he was taken one round after Michael Massey in the 2019 draft, I believe. So, and Rave has kind of always been this quadruple A, maybe can make it in the major leagues, but not considered an elite prospect. Maybe he's the guy. CJ Alexander is one of the guys they got in the Drew Waters trade, actually. He was the third player in that deal when they traded their supplemental first-round pick to the Braves. And kind of was an all-or-nothing slugger. And, I mean, he's hitting 325, slugging 569 in Omaha. He's more of a third base type. I don't know how much they feel comfortable with him, but he has started in the outfield this year. I don't know. This will be an interesting decision to make. I mean, to me, Drew Waters is the obvious guy, but for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable with him. He has not been hitting recently, so maybe they go in a different direction.
Let me add a couple things here. One, first of all, somebody was, we do send things out on LinkedIn and Twitch, Facebook, and of course YouTube. And somebody, our RCJ said, "Am I the only one here?" Most people are on YouTube, if you're wondering. So just FYI for folks, you can stream us however you want, but that's where most folks are that are in here in the chat room that I'm looking at are on YouTube. So if you want to be a part of the conversation, that's where you'll see most of the conversation. I put up the comments as they go. Also, I want you to know we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been solving them since 1994, celebrating 30 years, proudly serving the greater Kansas City metro area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, you can find them online at gannasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot, and proud sponsor of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Let's talk about where we know they do have to go, right? They got to find a pitcher, and Daniel Lynch was summoned back up. Are you okay with Daniel Lynch being the replacement right now for Michael Wacha?
Right now, yes. So first off, obviously, sucks that he got injured, especially because he got, injured in I want to say the first inning, maybe it was the second, but he ended up going 5 innings. Maybe that explained why he struggled a little bit, but we figured, even though they were doing precautionary x-rays after the game, I personally was fairly optimistic. If he'd broken something, he wouldn't have been able to get through the game. Well, he toughed it out, apparently, because he does have a fracture. Probably, not as bad a fracture as it could have been, certainly, was hairline. They're saying 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to be erring on the long end of that. But okay.
For the record, it is Dr.
Yeah,
Rany.
I'm not. Don't on this one. I'm not an orthophic surgeon. I just
as
want
a dermatologist, you're completely qualified to give us a diagnosis here. So lay it on.
If his skin was injured, I definitely would feel a lot more confident in my assessment. I'm just in general with bone fractures. 4 weeks is about that's it on the quick end, and you probably will need at least one rehab start, I'm guessing. So, this is hopefully not a 2-month injury, but 6 weeks will be near the All-Star break. Part of it also is the Royals may not need to rush him back because they have other options, right? And the long-term options, that's one reason I say Lynch for now, is Chris Bubich. We were just talking about how are they going to fit him into the rotation. Well, opportunity may have arisen. It would have been nice if they'd been 2 weeks later. But he just got his first AAA rehab start on, I think, Wednesday. And he faced 13 batters, struck out 7 of them. They gave up 1 hit and 1 walk. But the 7 strikeouts in 3 2/3, the slider was working. He was 91 to 93. Sounds like pretty much where he was before he got hurt last year. The velocity has never been his strength, but it's at least average for a left-handed starter. But it was that slider, as you recall, that was his new pitch last year. It was one of the first signs of the new era, the new regime. Brian Sweeney, his baseball spags, all of that. So it sounds like he's the pitcher in the catalog from mid-April of last year. And so if he's, ready, I would prefer him to Daniel Lynch. I am hopeful that this will be, 2 starts for Lynch, 2 more starts in rehab for Bubic. And at that point, if Bubic is dealing still, then unless Lynch has really grabbed the job by the horns, that they'll look to make a move. But one thing I want to point out in Lynch's defense, because we talk about, some of the numbers in AAA with a lot of the Royals hitters are raking. The pitchers' numbers don't look great. Offensive numbers in the International League are much, much higher than in the major leagues. I mean, average major league team right now is scoring around 4.3 runs a game. In the International League, it's like 5.2 to 5.3 runs a game. So the offensive levels are much higher. Some of that is the ball, probably. Some of it is ballparks. A lot of those ballparks are in higher elevation. The old Pacific Coast League, you may recall, was famous for being high altitude, high offense. A lot of those teams are in the International League. The point is that the hitters' numbers, you got to take a lot of air out of them. The pitchers' numbers might actually underrate them a little bit. And so Lynch's numbers in Omaha weren't great, particularly strikeout rate. But good command, 13 walks in 45 innings and 34 strikeouts. The Royals are not asking him to be anything but a number 5 starter. If you can give them just 5 decent innings, I think they'll be fine for 2 or 3 turns to the rotation. And if he's not cutting it at that point, I think absolutely it's Chris Bubic's job. And that'll give Chris Bubic a couple start audition, because if he pitches really well when Wacha's ready to come back, then the Royals at least know they have 6 options and they can decide to start giving guys, 2-week IL stint just to keep them fresh for for September and potential October. They might move Bubic or Wacha into the bullpen, or maybe Alec Marsh. Like, they'll have a lot of options. So this could turn out to be a good thing if the Royals get a good look at Lynch, get a good look at Bubic, and then can decide which of those guys, pick the 5 best guys and go with them from August 1st on.
Well, and let's keep in mind, Michael Wacha is not under contract for next year. It's a player option for him.
True.
So you're going to need somebody for that slot, whether it's Michael Wacha opting in, which I actually think we're kind of in that range where he's pitching well, but not spectacular to where he's going to go out and get a 4-year.
It's going to be a close decision. It may be something where the Royals work something out with him. Maybe they tack on another option or something in order to keep him if they want. Yes, there is a chance he's just pitching well enough that he might stick around and be worth sticking around.
Yeah, no, I would agree. The trade deadline should be approached how, right? We've already had a lot of comments in here. I know Bart was like, what do I care about 25 or 26? 26 or 27. You will when it's 26 or 27. Trust me, you will. And so that I get where Bart's coming from. He's like, hey, worry about next year. Next year was one of the comments I saw from folks. You can't. You have to always worry about next year now. That is part of the job of the general manager.
Absolutely.
Aquatrero doesn't. He has to win today. The general manager has to always be looking at what's going on. Otherwise, you would just overpay for whatever you need every time, right? And it just doesn't work like that, especially with this ball club that can't just buy its way past mistakes. They can't just go out and splash around cash. They splashed around a lot of cash this offseason, and that's about as much as you're going to see them do, right? They've got to have in-house answers. How would you be going about the trade deadline right now?
Right. No, I mean, it's a very good point. Like, you have to think about the future, and good GMs are always doing that. You don't want to be the team that trades Cole Reagans for 2 months of Aroldis Chapman. We don't want to be on the wrong side of that next time. Ethan brings us up in the comments that is Kyle Wright supposed to be on track to be healthy next year? Yeah, exactly. Kyle Wright's the guy. That is JJ already thinking about next year, acquiring a pitcher who's out for the year, with the hope that if Wacha, for instance, opts out or whatever, they have another starting pitching option for next year. So on that note, I thought JJ gave an interesting quote to Andy Rogers over at MLB. .com this week. I'll quote it. She was asking him about the trade deadline, and he said the thing that makes the trade deadline very difficult is there's a lot of competition. If we're looking at a reliever, you can guarantee that 12 other teams are looking at the same reliever. So how much are you willing to give up to get that extra bullpen arm? Or is our approach more? This, I think, is the money shot here. Let's try to win some of these deals on the margins. It may not be the marquee closer, but maybe 2 additional arms where we're saving our farm system, but we're making our bullpen deeper is the way to go. So essentially what JJ is saying is the question, should we trade for a star? Should we trade for star talent, or should we trade for depth? Should we trade for bulk guys where you're not getting the elite guy, but you're getting potentially more pitchers and you're paying a less of a price? Now, obviously, the only honest answer to that question is it depends, right? It depends on the options. But given what the Royals need, interestingly, I feel like in the bullpen, they have some options in-house. I mean, we just saw Will Klein, who got the win today. He's been throwing some strikes. He's never going to be a command guy, but with his stuff, he doesn't have to be a huge command guy. And he was pitching much better in Omaha before they called him up. I mean, I think he threw like 23 innings, and he had only allowed 8 hits all season. 14 walks. That's not good, but it's better than last year. And 23 strikeouts. So that's a guy, they've already added him. They've added Sam Long, who's pitched quite well. And I still think that, at some point they're going to give Walter Pennington a chance. Like with all the people we talked about in Omaha, the guy who by far deserves a promotion the most based on pure performance is Walter Pennington, who 60 strikeouts in 37 1/3. And that doesn't count. Today he faced 5 batters, retired them all, struck out 2. So he's up to 62 strikeouts in 34 innings. And less than a base runner per inning. So they have some
38 innings.
38 innings. That's an elite strikeout rate. Good performance from a guy who's never been a top pitcher, but he was signed as one of those non-drafted free agent types, I believe, in the 2020 draft when the draft only went five rounds. So being non-drafted is not necessarily a bad thing. It just wasn't a top 5 round pick, but has kind of worked his way up the ranks and has pitched a little bit better at every level, and then was amazing in spring training. He was the talk of spring training from like the first week. So this is not just like 2 months we've seen this. It's more, we're closing on 4 months of him pitching like this. The point is that they have enough options that I don't know if they need to trade for depth in the bullpen. If anything, I think they could just trade for depth when it comes to the outfield. I don't think they need to go and trade for, I'd love for them to get Joe Adell, but if you can't get that, just trading for a B- guy to play the corner outfield is maybe the bigger play for them. What I would say though is that trading for a guy in early June is going to give you a lot more value than waiting. I'd rather trade a little bit more to get a guy now. It doesn't have to be a star. Getting an average guy now is going to be as valuable for you as getting a star in July. And maybe you'd rather have the star in October, but you know what? Let's worry about October. If this team makes it to October, hey, they've had an incredible season. We're going to all be thrilled. And
would you be in favor of taking a shot at Randy Arozarena? Jeff Passan brought his name up on Thursday with me. I mean, he has been completely lost.
He has been. And to me,
but obviously, Matt Quatraro has a history, having been down with the Rays. So if he would sign off on it, would you want to try to turn around?
So basically, the question with Arozarena is really not about the kind of guy you're trading for, the value. Are you trading for do you want to give up more for the star versus the average guy? It really comes down to, do you think you can fix him? It's not really a JJ question to me. And it won't be an evaluation of JJ if it works. It'll be an Alex Zumwalt question. Is there something you think you've identified about Arozarena makes you think, yeah, this guy is just a simple tweak and he'll start hitting again. His strikeout to walk ratio hasn't been terrible. His power numbers haven't been terrible, but his batting average is 100 points less than it's been before. Is that something that's fixable? Is it something you just hit into bad luck? If he were 31 years old, I'd be like, stay away. He's 29. He has been an extremely consistent hitter throughout his career. So if you think you can fix him and the price is right, I would consider it.
So here to me is the question that they need to answer. And JJ, in that article you're talking about that Andy Rogers wrote, said that, we're trying to build it back for the long haul, right? I think that was his quote, something to that effect, right? Like basically this isn't just a 1-year wonder thing, right? Like we want to be around for the long haul on things. Okay. I get it. Is that reasonable? Like, I think the first thing you have to answer with yourself is, can you sustain winning the way the Rays have? Right? They're having a bit of an off year this year. We'll see if they get it going or not. But can you do that year after year after year? Or should you be thinking in terms of a window? If you think in terms of a window, then you can set your course. Okay, our window is now, or it's however long. Let's go for it. Or our window's not here. We're out over our skis. We're overachieving. Our window is down the road. Then that can set you where you want to go. If you believe that you can maintain it, then that really does limit how much you put into now, right? Like the moves that they made in 2015, you're not going to make if you're going to sustain it. You're not going to trade a premium pitching prospect for a guy that you're going to have for a few months.
Right. Here's the thing. I think I don't want to sit here and say, oh, this is not a 2003 level fluke, right? I don't think that they're going to go back to losing 100 games for the next 3 years like they did in 2003. And keep in mind, in 2003, they were coming off a 100-loss season. They were also coming off a 106-loss season. So you could absolutely be forgiven for saying that you think this is a total fluke. I don't think it's a total fluke. I do think that this, based on what I know right now, this team is more likely to make the playoffs than next year's team or probably the 2026 team. Like,
why?
Because I don't think
that's an indictment of this year. You actually don't think they're that
well,
good.
No, part of it is because this team is so reliant on its starting pitching, and starting pitching, it just is unreliable from 1 year to the next, just in terms of health. Just keeping all 5 of these guys, as we've already seen. But if you tell me right now that Lugo and Cole Reagans and Brady Singer will not have any significant arm injury between now and the end of next season, then I'll rescind what I just said. I just feel like those 3 guys specifically, and we don't even know what to expect from Alec Marsh, but those 3 guys are the really the big 3 of this rotation right now. And I just don't know how long you can plan for them to stay healthy. One of the reasons I'm saying this year is simply because there's only 100 games left in this season. I don't have to project 162. I don't have to project 100 more games that they stay healthy, 20 more starts. So that's part of it. And then part of it is I don't see immediate impact help coming from the minor leagues. I think there's some interesting things going on in the lower minor leagues. All right. And, maybe Blake Mitchell is going to be really good. Maybe Carter Jensen will be really good. Ben Caderna's having a pretty impressive season. Maybe not quite a breakout, but a kind of half breakout. Yeah, there's some help, but I don't see those guys. I think in 2 or 3 years, if the Royals can maintain the fort with the core, they're still going to have Bobby Witt around. They're still Michael Garcia. Even Vinny should still be productive and under contract in 2027 when those guys really start coming up. I think next year they're probably likely to take a step back. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying if I can make a trade that helps them now, even if it might hurt them next year a little bit, I'm inclined to make that move. So not within reason, but I'm inclined to make that move.
So who do you think has value that you're going to be moving to get somebody to help you now?
Well, that's the thing. The question: Do you trade one of your guys who is like at the major league level, who can be a help contribute now, but doesn't have like a star potential upside? Or do you take a chance and trade one of your like A-ball guys who's 20, 21 years old and has potential everyday player upside, but maybe you have a feeling is not going to reach that upside or whatever. Like the guy, if you want to make an impact trade, like get a real guy, not just a bullpen arm who's going to be a free agent in 2 months and isn't that good anyway, but get a real impact guy, and you want to trade somebody who's major league ready or near major league ready, then I think teams are going to be asking for Nick Lofton. Do you trade Nick Lofton? I mean, again, it always depends on what you're getting in return, but I still actually think Nick Lofton has the potential to be 90% of Whit Merrifield. Like maybe not a star. Whit Merrifield was so good at so many different things. He really was a star at his best. I don't know if Nick Lofton will be that guy, but he hits the ball hard. He hasn't shown it with his power numbers yet, but it's been a small sample size. But he hits the ball hard and he makes excellent contact. Today, having him up after Nelly was representing the winning run on third base, he was absolutely the guy I wanted up at the plate. MJ was behind him. I was I was like, I hope Nick Lofton comes through because I have no faith that MJ's ever in that runner from third. And he got a ball that he made contact with, and he got it in the air, and that's exactly what you wanted. And that was a great at bat from him. So I don't know if I trade that guy. Do I trade one of the interesting prospects they have in A ball or low A? Maybe not Blake Mitchell. I mean, the guy, if you have a chance to get a Joe Adell type, you get a chance to get a star player, then that's when Carter Jensen comes into the conversation. Simply because you've got Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell, and we've talked about this. Like, don't do what you did with MJ and Salvador Perez.
Well, right. If I were running the show, I mean, we've been doing this podcast long enough that MJ Melendez would have been traded.
Yeah, we both would have.
It's just that you got Salvador Perez. Like, what do you? Come on.
Catchers do not move to other positions very well. So, like, you don't want to have to move one of those guys. So I don't think that you need both of them. But Carter Jensen's the guy you trade for a star player or players under contract for 3 or 4 years, not the guy you trade for just for 2024. That may be a guy you trade for 2024, 25, and 26, and you're confident that by 2027, when he would have been in your lineup potentially, that the rest of your farm system has come along to the point where you won't miss him very much.
Well, and this is where you have to be honest with yourself about what you have in your system. Like Ben Kudrna is putting up some better numbers now.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he going to be the real deal? Because if you're not sure, then you move him.
Exactly. He'd be another example of a guy.
We were all about Blake Walters, right? That was going to be it. He's not doing anything fantastic right now. But if you believe in the arm, if you believe that that's special, then you keep him. If it's not, then you move him because there's a bit of a buzz around him. That's one of the names that Jeff Passan mentioned as to who teams would have an interest in. So.
Sure.
You got to. This is where you have to evaluate your team, your farm system better than everybody else. You have to
100%
move on from
100%. Because if you trade Blake Walters and he turns into a guy like a year from now, he's zooming up top 100 lists, you're gonna feel like crap, right? Like if for whatever reason, or you have information about your guy that you just don't feel like he's going to reach his ceiling, this is the time to trade him. Austin Charles is a lower level of that, but like another guy where it's like the athleticism, the youth, there are teams out there that'd be very interested in that guy. If a team comes asking for Austin Charles, the Royals have to be honest. Do we think this guy is going to convert all of his athletic potential into being an everyday guy or not? Right? Those are the guys you could consider trading, because if you get it right, you may never miss the guy at all. You think about all the guys they traded for Andrew Benintendi a couple of years back. What was it? Khalil Lee was a guy who had some success even in Double-A. It was a ballsy trade, but they were getting 2 years. Like they got 2 years of not an elite player, but like an established everyday, slightly above average, and only like 25, 26 years old in Andrew Benintendi. In retrospect, when you look at what happened with that, the Royals weren't in a position to take advantage of it, but it was a hell of a trade. They traded 4 guys, none of whom have panned out in any significant way at the major league level. Benintendi was amazing for them for a year and a half. They traded him for 3 guys. One of them, TJ Sycamore, I don't know if he's pitched this year. Beck Way is in the bullpen now. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but Chandler Champlin is turning into one of the best pitching prospects in the organization. He's in AAA now. That's another reason why I'm not sure I really want to trade for too many relievers, because you have guys in the AAA rotation. We're talking about maybe Bubic ends up in the bullpen. Maybe Champlain can be in the bullpen for the second half of the season. Like the Royals have some arms that interest me a lot more, whereas the outfielders, it's all like, maybe. I don't know if this guy can really help, but he's better than MJ Melendez. And then Benintendi signed this enormous 5-year deal with the White Sox, and it's been terrible. Well, that was a great trade, but it started with the Royals identifying guys that they believe the industry valued more than they did in their own system. They should do that again.
And then once you start to have success in developing starting pitching, then you can move off a guy as a starter and get him back into the bullpen and let him, perfect his craft as what he's probably going to be. The Royals are perpetually like Frank Mazzucato. How long before they move off of Frank Mazzucato as a starter and just admit this is another first-round pick that sucks, right? He's walking the world like it does not look like it's there right now. But how long do they keep trying to justify their draft pick of him before they just get to, we're junking these 2 pitches, use these 2 pitches, and at least maybe we'll have a badass
Or
left.
yeah, or at least move him to the bullpen, and maybe he can pick up velocity, and his fastball that's at 89 might actually go to 91, 92. So, they've some decisions to make, and part of the decisions is personnel. Who do you trade? Who do you acquire? Obviously, but who do you trade? When do you trade? Do you trade now versus you traded in July? If you can you convince the market, because it is a seller's market? There are more buyers than sellers right now. Can you convince somebody to sell to you now? And is that worth the premium? Right. So JJ has some difficult decisions to make, which is why right now I'm not even talking about the trades. Just look at what's in AAA and see if you can upgrade the team a little bit there. They've started to do it with the bullpen. Maybe do it with left field as well, because I really feel like we're coming into a really tough stretch of games. The next 12 games, next 4 series are all against excellent teams. You got the Guardians, who are obviously the team you're trying to catch, and then you got to think the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks is the other team. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I'll have to play the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Guardians here in the next 12 games. Oh, the Mariners. So you can't go into these next 12 games with 8 lineup spots. You've got to have that 9th guy. And
I'm with you. I mean, you make the move now. If you're gonna the club is competing and you need help now, you go do it now.
Right.
You get in front of it. And I'll go back to what you said earlier on, where you said, well, maybe you give up a little bit more to get it done now to make sure you get your guy. So I think JJ Picollo's eye has been pretty good, hasn't it?
It is. I mean, it's interesting. Remember, they were really interested in Luis Arias,
right?
And they didn't trade for him. And I mean, the price that the Padres paid was quite high. But I mean, I'm sure that whatever they paid for him, it's been paid off in spades. I mean, he was hitting, I think, 299 with the Marlins, but this is a consistent batting title winner. And last I looked, he was hitting like 398 since the trade. And I mean, I don't know where the Royals would have played him, although with Massey on the deal, probably he would have been playing second base now. But even left field DH, like when you're hitting for it, that's exactly what the Royals need, somebody to extend the lineup. And he's done a great job. But the fact that they were in on him, this is not Dayton Moore waiting to the last moment, and waiting until guys' trade value dropped 80% before trading. I'm like, JJ's being proactive. But the one thing that we always heard from Dayton Moore is, how he learned from the gurus at the Braves, when you want to make a change with your team, is to wait until you feel like you need to make that change and then wait another week or 2 after that, right? And that always drove me nuts, this concept that's like, wait until, and then wait more. It's like, yeah, every now and then maybe it turns out you didn't have to make the move, but how many times has that happened in the Royals just let a problem linger and linger and linger? And the problem this year is the Royals are in a playoff chase. They don't have the luxury of waiting, even if they think things can turn around. They've already waited. To me, they've already waited that extra week or 2 anyway. They did it with MJ. They did it with Hunter Renfroe and kind of with Nelly Velasquez. And Nelly, to their credit, he's gotten the chance to show that he get back to where he was last year, but he did it last year. We've seen it from him. Hunter, they are slowly kind of phasing out. I mean, look, I was worried they wouldn't play Nick Lofton much because they've got Adam Frazier playing second base. Adam Frazier's today was playing right field, so that Lofton was replacing Renfroe in the lineup. Cortero is using these pieces. I really, I appreciate how he's trying to tap dance and trying to find solutions when he has multiple position spots that are a problem.
Well, and that's a Rays way. If you're on the roster, you're going to play for the Rays. Right. And if you're on the roster, you're going to play for this team, because that's how Matt Cortero came up. And that's what they look to do.
Which is why MJ maybe shouldn't be on the roster, because then they're going to play him. And
exactly. And that's why, to come full circle to that, yes, that's got to change. He's got to come off the roster, and they've got to get somebody that can either catch the ball or somebody that can hit the ball. Right. And it's just frustrating. Like, it is a time now. And I'd love to see him. I'm with you. I never liked that. You have to know what your club is. That's like acting like you don't know what your team is. Right. And MJ Melendez, I don't know how there's any way you came into this year knowing that MJ Melendez was good and that you're staying the course. You hoped he was good, but I'm with you about the swing on him. Like, that's always been like kind of a thing. It's why they should have come to that conclusion when he was in the minor leagues. Right. And now they've got a depth of catching again. And are they going to move that? That's something that they could be moving to get some help.
I hope that it'll be very interesting if they end up moving Carter Jensen. And again, I don't want to move him, but it's like, if they do, it will have demonstrated to you and me that JJ learned from one of Dayton's really kind of his last mistakes. Right? Like, we can, as upset as I am about it, like, maybe I think if there's one mistake I've made with JJ since he was hired, is putting too many
firing him last year.
I didn't fire him, but we'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
But putting too many of the sins of his predecessor on his shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Figuring, I think, reasonably that being the right-hand man for somebody for 15 years, that you guys were joined at the hip. Maybe they weren't joined at the hip. Maybe it was just like their pinky toes or something. But the point is that would be a great way of demonstrating even more so that he does do things fundamentally different than Dayton does. So quick, before we wrap up, we should give our numbers for the playoff optimism.
That's what I was going to say.
All
Yeah,
right,
let's finish with that.
Okay.
Playoff
All right.
optimism meter.
What's your number?
Well, I arrived at a 5, right?
Okay.
Last week, which I'm still there. This streak hasn't knocked me down, hasn't built me up. I do like that they're at least grabbing a game here and there, so it's not an epic fail. But I still remain at a 5. It's a long way to go. We're seeing injuries. We'll see Michael Wacha go down. Isbel got hit in the face, and now he got hit in the head again. Like, I'm not convinced that they can weather the injuries. I don't know that I can get beyond a 5, and the trade deadline will be big. But if they come through the stretch that they're playing and they play 500 plus against this stretch, then I'll move off a 5. But right now they need help, and I don't know that I'll come much more off a 5 until we come through the trade deadline and they make an addition that lengthens the lineup. So I'm kind of locked in at a 5 here for a while. Okay. You were at a 6.5. Was that?
I think I went to 7. They were like, when they had just won like 8 in a row. I think I was at 7. So I'm going to drop to 6.25. I'm going to be a little chintzy here. 6.25. I would have gone to 6.5, but for the injuries, right? And they had a 2-5 week. I'm going to drop it a little bit. But then you throw in Wacha being out for potentially a month. Yeah, it's like, okay, but I didn't want to go back to where I was. I've been a 6 for a long time. I'm like, I still feel better than I did 2 weeks ago because we're starting to get farther and farther into the season, and they're still holding on to a playoff spot. And like you said, sometimes the mark of a good team is how they play when things aren't going well. And especially after a win like today, it's like they solo win, and they need to do that from time to time if they're going to stay in the race. So real quick, the objectivity check here. Baseball Prospectus last week had the Royals at a 43% chance, I think, of making the playoffs. That's dropped to 31, but that doesn't include today's win. Fangraphs, which does include today's win, they were at 63%. They dropped to 55, which is still not bad given that they had a 2-5 week. Okay, that playoff odds dropped about 8%. They're still above 50-50. I feel like that's a really good estimation right there. Hopefully, as the season goes along, the Baseball Prospectus will stop using its natural pessimism towards the Royals as they have fewer and fewer games to be pessimistic about. But I'm still feeling good about the season.
Yeah, no, I feel good as well. But they've gotten deeper into the season. They're starting to take on a little water. Let's see how they handle it. Mm-hmm. Let's see Daniel Lynch do the job. I am very excited about Chris Bubic, though. I will tell you that. I love those numbers. I mean, 1 hit, 1 walk, and 3 and change with 7 strikeouts. That is a great sign.
Right.
And whether it's as a weapon in the bullpen or as the guy that they need to start, that's exciting. But
and my hope is that he'll have a fresh arm.
Pretty damn good for them too. I mean, I can't, I don't understand why, but he's been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, look, you need depth, right? They've been very fortunate they haven't had to test their depth, and it is fortunate that they are getting Bubic back at the exact moment when they kind of need him. And if in a best case scenario, Wacha comes back, goes back in that rotation, but Bubic becomes a very, very interesting weapon out of the bullpen. And again, if we're talking about the playoffs, not just making it there, but like making a dent in the playoffs, having a potential multi-inning weapon from the left side, out of the pen in Bubic will be a huge thing because. The nice thing about the playoffs, if you have 3 good starters, they're going to make 85 to 90% of your starts in the playoffs. And the Royals have Lugo, Reagans, and Singer. If those 3 guys stay healthy and pitch like they have been, Wacha and Marsh are going to be luxuries. And then it really comes about filling out your bullpen as much as you can. And my hope is between now and September, some of these guys will step up. We'll figure out a lot about the guys they already have in the bullpen, but also someone like Bubic, maybe someone like Pennington, maybe Champlin. I don't know. Somebody will emerge. Teams, Joe Sheehan has written about this a lot. Like I think it was the 2018 Red Sox when they won the World Series. They had a terrible bullpen relative to a contender all season long, and they basically just found some guys in September and rode those. And they just had a hot streak, and they rode them throughout October. And that was the difference between, a team that had some major bullpen issues and a team that won the World Series. The Astros have done this in the past. So the bullpen, I don't know if they need to go out and make a big trade for a guy, is my point. I think they have enough options. They need to sift through them. But in the outfield, they need to get a bat. They need one bat, and they need to get it in a trade.
All right. Don't forget, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every single project comes with a written warranty. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.